Good afternoon and welcome to the Randolph County Board of Education, our work session for today, March 30th, 2025. At this time, could I get a motion to approve our agenda?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as printed. And at this time, we'll have a presentation by Scott Construction Management.
Okay, thank you very much. A little quick introduction. I'd asked Mr. John if he had told y'all much or shared much about what he had engaged us to try to help with, but my name is Jay Grubbs. I'm from Heflin, Alabama. I own and operate Scout Program Management. My business partner is Sloan Walker from Roanoke, Alabama. He now resides in Birmingham, but I live in Heflin. I've lived there my whole life. I've been working with school systems in Alabama and Georgia for 25 years. And what we specialize in is basically just helping school systems achieve their goals and try to manage whatever projects they have on the horizon, whatever projects they're trying to do, helping them with renovations, additions, and new programs. What we've been asked to do, I want to make very clear, is just provide information to the board. I serve as the board chair in Cleveland County. So I understand how important you guys' role is and how hard it is to do what we do every day as school board members. So I'm very sensitive to that. But again, we are only as good as the information we're provided to try to make the right decisions to move forward for the kids of this county and the kids of the state of Alabama as a whole. So a couple things we've done and have already been done for Randolph County Schools is the State Department of Education got a grant. It's one of those federal program grants, post-COVID grants, and they picked out, there was about 30, I believe it was 30 plus systems across the state of Alabama, underfunded systems, mind you, to go in and do assessments of every facility in that school system. Randolph County was one of those systems that the state sent a company up here to do those assessments for all your facilities countywide. All right, so they provided about a 200-page report for Randolph County Schools talking through in that binder right there. So it may be closer to 300 pages. Anyway.
And that's just for Randolph County?
Yeah, that's just Randolph County. So they went through every facility. They graded every facility from a mechanical, electrical, plumbing, structural, roofing, windows, flashing, envelope, floor covering, cosmetics, the whole 9 yards on every facility in this county. And they went through and graded every component of every facility in this county. And when they did that, they came up with a needs assessment for every building. And they basically graded every building. And every building was given a grade, basically a percentage of basically the life left on that building. So some may say that it's got 20% life left. So the building's about 80% used. And those are some of your worst buildings. Some buildings may have 90% life left on because they're newly built or new additions. So they evaluate all that. So then what we did is take that information that they provided Randolph County Schools, and we basically put together, or helped put together, this report, or this feasibility study, looking at what it would take for Randolph County to move forward in any sense. Cleveland County is not much different. We have very little revenue streams coming into Cleveland County. So I'm well aware of how tight budgets are in our rural county school systems. So in order, I'll just keep using Cleveland County as an example because I know that dear to my heart. In order for us to do any additional major projects in Cleveland County, there's going to have to be some sort of revenue coming into Cleveland County Schools so we can do more, because what we've got coming in now is going to basically maintain what we have and to maintain the operations of the school system. And that's operations, transportation, teachers, the whole 9 yards. So the same thing in Randolph County, very similar. In order to move forward with any of these major capital improvements that are required by this assessment provided by the state, somehow there's gotta be some sort of revenue coming in additionally over and beyond what you currently have, that's just kind of a break-even point. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? Y'all please jump in if you've got any questions through any of this. So we've gone through all that, and there's several different scenarios that we've looked at to try to break down. One scenario is, I know you've got some schools that are smaller than other schools. And what would it look like if you, I mean, can we use the overarching? So if you actually did something similar to what Clay Central did, Clay County did back in 2009, 2010, and I was actually, I was part of that project as well. So I was, worked hand in hand with Governor Riley and architects and everything to get that school built. But if you were to do something similar to that in Randolph County, you know, you're not talking about a $30 million project that was spent 16 years ago. You're talking about a $70 million plus project, because that's just the difference in cost over time for that size project. So a $70 million project, that's a lot of money, and that would take a lot of revenue to cover that. And to put, just kind of simplify it, for every $4 million of capital improvement, you need just about 1 mil. Okay? So if you take 70 million and divide it by 4 million, that's a lot of mills that you would have to go up in order to take care of that debt service. So I'm going to back up and we'll come back to that. So let's say, to simplify this, if you just looked at we broke down, I think you've got the packet here. We did a priority 1 and priority 2 based off the grading from the state. Which page is that on?
Just past that.
If y'all will turn to,
It's about the fourth page over.
okay, I think it's page 5, it's the page. All right, if you look at that, priority 1,
Page
priority
6.
2.
Page 6.
Does everybody see this page? This page here. So, priority 1 were the projects in that state assessment that were majority lifespan gone. So these are all buildings that are at like 80% of their life expectancy has been used. So if we took all those projects that the state has laid out that grades that low for Randolph County, and we put a dollar figure to it, just to get those buildings up to snuff, is about just over $21 million, okay? So to put that in perspective, if you just said as a board, all right, well, we need to at least do that because these buildings they're gone. So that debt service would cost about $109,000 a month on a debt service. And the debt service right now for school systems is somewhere between 4.25% and probably 4.6% on a 30-year debt service bond, a school bond. So once you convert that down on a 30-year bond, you can afford about $109,000 a month payment. Well, that's about 5.2 mils. So in order to do this, there would have to be a millage increase or a sales tax, whatever revenue stream you can utilize to get you to where you can afford a $109,000 payment. 1 mil in Randolph County is $251,273 a year. Okay. Is that clear as mud? Is everybody following what I'm saying on how the debt service, the millage? All right, so.
You got a question, Jay?
What was that 1 mil in Randolph County?
1 mil in Randolph County is worth $251,273. That's on an annualized basis, that's how much 1 mil of property tax brings in for the school system, So, if you take that 251,000 times the 5+ mills, that gets you to a debt service to be able to do $21 million worth of projects from that state assessment on these buildings. The building's in the worst condition. Does that make sense?
Let me make sure, you said on phase 1, all of those listed are at 80% used.
Well, it's 80% roundabout. They're all majority life gone.
Okay.
Some of them may be 75, some of them may be 85.
So
but
on
they're
average is what
on-
you should say.
Yes, ma'am,
Okay.
that's what I'm saying,
Okay.
just on average
Okay.
lifespan.
Gotcha.
And I can chime in a little bit on that. My name's
Yeah, don't let me
Lamar.
just take it. I didn't
Is
even
out
know
of-
you did that terrible.
You're doing a great job.
Lamar is out of our Birmingham office, he's over there with
I'm a
Sloan.
scout also, and these numbers, and they will reach out and get you because they're big numbers, but they are all numbers that came straight out of that assessment. And if you look at that next page, that it says page number 2 down there, but you have, like, look at phase 1 where it says site name, you have field house, and you have this next column which says FCI. That is straight out of that assessment book from the state, which is the Facilities Conditions Index. And that is telling us where these rank in priority. And a solid building that's either brand new or very little needs to it, it's gonna be in a 1%, 2%, 3% index factor. And as you can see in this phase 1, these buildings are up in the 28s and the 30s, and so that's how that priority took place, was to figure out which ones were in dire need and get those addressed first. And then second phase were the ones that still had a high rating, but they were not as high as phase 1. And then in that assessment also, it gives you the square footages of the building, and then those numbers, the construction budgets, that's the state numbers also that they have in that assessment. And so we did not try to, they did look to us, Jay and myself was talking about it, and they did look a little on the low side coming from the state, and so we added a 12% contingency to that, which you'll see down at the bottom of each one of those. And that is to just take care of soft costs, which a lot of these you'll need to have a architect involved or engineers involved, and that will be for their fees. And so anyway, we wanted to make sure that we had a correct range that we were dealing with.
Not just sticks and bricks, but an entire program.
That's right. But it's, this goes through each campus. It looks at each building on each campus, and then that's how we derive the priorities, and that's how we came up with phase 1 and phase 2. So if you group all together in phase 1, it's at 21 million, right at 21.2. And then phase 2 would come in directly after that and start that whole construction process. So the time frame that you're looking at is the year of 2026 for phase 1, and 2027 you could complete phase 2. If you combine all of that, you're looking at a grand total of about $35 million range that the state has assessed Randolph County and said this is the kind of upgrades to your buildings that's needed.
Which is about just over 8 mills.
And that would have all our buildings up to where they should be functional for 30 years down the road or so.
I know y'all gotta have some questions.
Yeah, just wanna make sure I get this, some of the local newspaper, and I didn't know if you had a copy of that, you could give me or not. But what was the estimated price of priority 2?
$11,981,770.
Right at 12 million.
Yeah.
And it would be how many meals?
That would be approximately around 3 meals.
Okay, so we're looking at a total of about 8 meals.
8.2, yes,
That's
sir.
right.
Okay, thank you.
And I would say this, like right now, on our schools, we have cut teachers to the bare bones. I would like to be able to add some teacher units back to our schools, like some of our schools don't have home ec. We know we need, to where we can have some good, have a teacher in there with a teacher in there where they could learn from a teacher instead of having to do an access class or an online class or something like that. So that would probably add another meal and a half or 2 meals to that, to be able to have that.
Where are we currently on the meals per
We're 12,
12?
we're total 12.
So we get $200-something thousand per meal?
251, 273.
You know, and what has really helped us on some of this total cost of redoing what we have is, as y'all well know, over the last 6 or 7 years, with some COVID money, we put new roofs on, we put new windows, we put new doors, we've done HVAC. You know, we got the governor, we got the grant out here at the vocational school that helped us to do some things. So over the last few years, we've probably spent $10 million in the system to upgrade the best we could. But anybody that's been in some of our buildings, for example, Woodland High School, the front building, I believe the old building burned in 1952. So that building's 75 years old. Wadley main building was built in the 60s. Rock Mills was built in 29. Crawford Haynes building in Woodland is in that same 1929 to 30 age group. So we're dealing with buildings that nowadays a lifespan of a new constructed building would be about 30 years. Is that what you would say, Jay?
I mean, I would hope you would have 130 years.
But I mean, before you had to remodel and do some things like that. So this would at least get our buildings feasibly where we can go on down the road. From what I saw on the numbers on a consolidation for a consolidated high school, that's just an outrageous amount of money for Randolph County to have to pay for.
And I just, like, let's take the new Wadley, I'm more familiar with Wadley because that's where I went to school, and the old gym. So we're talking about replacing the old gym
Not
No.
replacing, it's just renovations to it.
renovations. I mean, do we really, I mean, be honest, do we need the old gym, for $2 million, do we need the old gym? Leave that, tear it down first.
Well, I know to build a new one like that would probably be between $5 and $6 million.
Yeah.
I mean, those are
And-
things you can
and
look at.
part of that assessment is a total replacement cost. They have that in there too. We just took the renovation cost to try to come up with a
Right.
range of what we were looking at. And there will be some play if there's a building like that that does need to be totally, torn down and rebuilt or whatever.
And that is, like Lamar said, that is in there. It was like, for this, it was in the $30 million range to tear down like the old gym and the front building at Woodland, the middle school, to tear those buildings down and replace those with new. That price went up into between 50 and 60 million. So there is another layer. There's like a 35, and then there's a 50 to 60, and then there's a 70 to 90. So,
But it could be, to your point, it could be a combination of several things. I mean, if the board was blessed enough to be able to get additional revenue, then you could pick and choose. Well, we'd really like to just go ahead and replace that gym. But this classroom addition over here, it's got great bones, let's renovate it. Let's use some of this funds to renovate it. So I mean, it's y'all's prerogative to do it however you so will please.
And one was the vocational building, which is 700. I guess that's maybe talking about home ec and ag together.
Yeah, that
the
whole
building.
building.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
You know, and like you say, and we've got that building there, I'd love to put home ec back down there. You know, or
We
something.
need that.
Yeah, so and that's why I wanted to talk about the additional, couple of meals to cover some of these teacher units, with the cost of
Well, that's right, more than anything, I think, we're gonna have to be a little bit lax on our buildings to get the number of teachers we need for the students, I mean, you know.
And we do, and occasionally there is some money that comes in with a state bond issue or something like that, and that can always be used to pay down the debt service, you know, or something like, or if something pops up in the meantime that you need to do, that's a real, need, like a building, say that we didn't replace a roof on, and we had to do that sometime down the road. What little we get from the state, could kind of cover some of those things in the future. So this would be something, if we wanted to move forward, what I would say is, and we don't have to do anything tonight, you know, we can do that at a later date, let everybody think about it and get some input from the community and things like that of kind of what direction we might want to go. And then we could go and look at every facility with a group, like you come into Wadley, because you know Wadley, and have a group from Wadley and say, you know, these are our facilities, what do we need down here? Do we need to spend $2 million on that gym, or do we just move all of our PE up to the new gym? You know, just redoing that same thing with every one of our schools.
That's right.
I guess this is a starting point of where we think we might want to go and which direction we want to go. You know, it's kind of like I said last week, and, you know, this is an information meeting. You know, if you got questions, let's talk about them, because you may have a question I hadn't thought about, or, you know, Ms. Waters hadn't thought about, and things that we can look at.
Does the 35 million total, when you're talking about updates, is that only structural updates, or would that be, like, let's say you're updating classrooms, does that cover the cost of new furniture in that classroom also? So is any of that considered in this, or is it just structure?
Well, when you go ahead and.
That was, in that assessment, they do add what's called a development, increase or budget to each one of those projects, which is, it doesn't specifically list out, but it would be for potentially your FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, architects, engineers, and that was the reason it looked a little on the shy side when we were looking at that, and that's the reason we added 12% to each one of these to give us a range that I felt was appropriate.
So like on that contingency fee, what building costs going up a couple percent a year, something like that. So every year we doing off anything, it costs
Yeah, and the way
exponentially more.
and the way these phases are set up is, if phase one was to start and be completed in 2026 construction, that has that certain dollar amount. And then phase two, the way we put that together was to put an inflation factor on top of that you could, these numbers are still good for when it happens in 2027, if that makes sense.
Okay, so to clarify, the 12% soft cost that you put in here could include the FFE costs?
Yes, ma'am.
That you,
Yes.
okay, all right.
And some of this, if you'll see under the site cost there, it talks about some paving of parking lots and things like that are in horrible shape in just about every facility we have. We have a lot of teachers and students parking on grass and on gravel. So when you do that, when you come in a building, that does not help your floors any. So it would cover things like that too.
So the consolidated central plan of one school for combining all schools is at this point kind of off the table simply because it would be too costly, like
We're talking what was it, 17, 18 mils?
17 mils.
17 mils just for the building. Now,
Somebody
something,
gonna vote for that. I know Randolph County.
something like that, I don't think you'd have to add for extra teachers, because when, Ms. Kelly and, Ms. Braden looked through that, because we looked at the numbers of what it would take, because it would be a mid-5A school. So we kind of looked at other schools that size and what kind of faculty and things that you would need. So we think it would be within 2 or 3 teachers of what we have now that would be able to do that. So there wouldn't be that extra cost, like we talked about, keeping our smaller schools, you know, in our communities the way they are now.
I got you.
But, you know, and that's kind of on the, what, 70, 80 million, you know. Even if you do that, you still gotta do some stuff to your other buildings. You know, you still got a 1929
existing
building
buildings.
at Rock Mills if you,
Right.
so you're probably realistically looking 110 if you do stuff to other buildings on a consolidation, would you think, Jay?
It would be over 100 million.
Yeah, cause you still gotta do some of those things to your other buildings. So I'm kinda like you,
70 was the low side of that.
yeah, 70 on the low side,
I'm just-
you know, own
On
up
a
into,
consolidated
own
new
up into the
campus.
over 100.
Like again, using Clay Central as a comparison for, you know, a complete new campus. We're not just talking about a high school classroom building, it would be a new campus.
I got you.
So consolidation's off the table, Mike. Do me a favor, and that needs to be your headlines. Consolidation off the table.
We all want our houses to
I'm
be
tired
around
of the phone
each other.
I know that's right.
Everybody want that as a headline, consolidation off the table.
All day, off the table.
And let me, elaborate a little more too, so, cause we have done, and we're already in the process now, a similar program in Marshall County, which is up on Sand Mountain. And, their needs assessment, they're a county school system, but they've got 5 city systems in their county too. So their funding, quite frankly, it was tough, very tough for them. So their needs assessment. It's a great ringtone. Their needs assessment, they were somewhere in the neighborhood to bring all their buildings up to snuff, so their kids had just as good facilities as the surrounding city systems within that county, was $160 to $170 million.
And I'm sorry, what county did you say?
Marshall.
Okay.
Marshall, it's where Boaz, Albertville, Gunnersville, that area, on Sand Mountain. Well, they increased, their county implemented, the county commission implemented a sales tax up there. But even that sales tax was only enough for them to go get bonding up to about 80 million, which was about less than half of what they really needed to do everything. But they had to start somewhere to try to help the kids of that community. So that's really why I approached this and explained this from the start the way I did, because, you know, to bring everything up, as John said earlier, not consolidate, but just to bring everything up to get the kids the best they possibly can. I mean, you're looking at over $50 million. Well, there may not be an appetite for that in Randolph County as far as increasing tax revenue. So where could you start to try to get something more manageable? And that's the reason we decided to basically break them out to where you could physically see the buildings that were in the highest need, then the next highest need, and then have those conversations about, okay, well, why don't we replace this one? If this, because you've got, the information's here, as far as costs associated with total replacements. Now again, I feel like, construction costs have leveled out trend upward, I think it's leveled out, but I don't know that we're ever gonna go back to building, new facilities, $200, $250 a square foot. I think square footage cost of new buildings is gonna exceed 325 plus from now on. I think that's the world we're living in, which is a big difference from pre-COVID. But I kind of wanted to lay that out because that is the reason we approached it the way we did. So I hope that's okay.
And any kind of millage increase would have to be voted on by the public, so that's why if, whichever way we wanted to move forward, we would do something and like come to Wadley and have a list. If we did a 10 mil increase, this is what you're gonna get. This is where your money's gonna go. And we'd go over here at Wedow at RCHS in the middle school and elementary, and at Woodland and at Rock Mills, so that everybody knows this is what we're gonna get, and make that commitment that, if it went down, then when the debt's gone, then that can be looked at by somebody down the road after, I'll be gone. Maybe some of y'all still left around, but, in 30 years, that'll be somebody else's decision to make at that point in time, and to see how the schools are then and how the population has shifted, in the county over the years, because, population has increased a fairly good bit. I think have gone up probably about 1,000 residents per year for the last 8 or 9 years or so. So the population is growing, and when people want to come in, new industries, they'll come in, and the three things new industries look at. They look at healthcare, they look at education, and they look at recreation. Would you agree with that, John? So, to bring in industry, for us to have our schools up where they need to be and offering the things we need to be, I think is imperative for Randolph County as a whole to grow.
I agree.
I agree.
I got a question that I guess, I just don't know the answer to, some of y'all might.
Yeah.
Now, when you increase meals, doesn't the state get, we only get a certain portion of that, right? Wouldn't the state get more money, or, cause what, that's not right,
No,
okay?
so every school system has a minimum amount of meals they're getting.
Okay,
So if this county was to vote in a millage increase for education,
well, okay,
it would be for.
education,
That's-
okay.
I mean, it's still adding to the overall millage.
That's right,
someone
that's right,
would pay,
okay, yeah,
but it's earmarked for
Yeah.
education. It's kind of like our sales tax in Cleveland County for capital improvement. That sales tax is coming to education.
so if the county commission wanted to vote, they could put a meal that just goes for them?
A sales tax, not a millage.
Okay,
Yeah, the
But
millage, my understanding, could be wrong, but my understanding, property tax has to be voted on by the people. Sales tax can be taken care of by the county commission or
I'm
the
saying,
city.
if you do a meal for, we could do a meal just earmarked for education.
So you could do 11, instead of 10 for education, you could do 11 or 12 total, and 2 would go to the commission. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
commission around here is just dirt poor.
Yeah,
First thing in Randolph County is our roads. So, they're always whining about.
and I
But
would
I've
think,
always heard property taxes, the state gets about 85% of our property tax, we get left with about 15 for revenue commissioners. Because all the money that we, comes into it, certain
Well-
amount goes to the state.
and I would have to break mine out. You probably could look at yours and see, cause it tells here on 100, on the very back around here, it talks about or toward the back, talks about, the different millage rates, like, for example, look over here on the side, if you have $100,000 house, where we're at now, you would pay 120. It's the one here that property tax notice.
Yeah.
If you have $100,000 house, right now we're at 12 mils, so you would pay $120 per $100,000 house. And if we went up to 10, it would be $220. if we added 10 more to that. So that's kind of a sliding scale of, you know, if you've got $1 million house, it'll kind of tell you where, or goes up by the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Because a $100,000 house, you're only taxed on 10% of that. So your tax is based on a 10% of that value of the house.
Am I wrong, or would that, John, not have to go through our legislative delegation?
Probably put on the
Put it on
ballot,
the ballot,
and it would
okay.
probably be a special election.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we're waiting, and I've talked to, you know, there's some, y'all can do that, there are different people that can help with, you know, the advertising and getting the word out, kind of, so to speak. But I think going community to community and say, this is what you're gonna get for your increase in millage rate, for your kids and your grandkids and coming down the road. I think if the public knows where their dollars are going, specifically what they're for, I think the public would be behind what we're doing. But I do think, like, you know, John said there, I think the public in Randolph County likes their local schools and their communities.
Y'all are getting, are you getting a penny sales tax? You're getting a penny sales tax and you're splitting it with Roanoke,
There's
correct?
penny sales tax, and that one is split with Roanoke based on student population, and that changes every year, but it's basically 60-40, like this year I think it's 38 and change for Roanoke, and it just varies every year.
Talking about the reason I was asking that, you're talking about the county commission, which all the county commissions around the state. So if you're getting a penny sales tax, school systems, and most school systems are getting some form of penny sales tax for capital improvement. But the majority, I think there may be only 2 or 3 in the state that the county commissions are sharing the SSUT tax with that school system. Are y'all familiar with the SSUT or know what that is?
Yeah, I don't have a clue.
What that is, when you buy something online and it says tax,
Oh,
and
okay.
that tax does, like, if you buy it, you go to Walmart and buy it, that tax comes to us. The way it's listed, it's a usage, basically a usage fee. And because it doesn't say tax, that goes straight to the commission, and we don't get our normal cut out of that.
Well, it goes to state, so the SSUT in Alabama is 8%. And that 8% goes to Montgomery. And then Montgomery sends part of that to the county commission and part of that to the municipalities, okay? But none of it comes to the school system. So the scenario, I wanted to give you an example. So if you do an online order at Walmart and spend $100 and go pick up some toilet paper and paper towels and some hamburger meat, the school system is getting 0, none. Roanoke City Schools is getting 0, Randolph County Schools is getting 0. But the commission and the municipalities are still getting that tax. So it's that tax is, and that tax was implemented many, many years ago, and this continues to increase and increase and increase every year because it is obviously internet tax. If you buy it online at your computer, or you buy it on an app for online pickup, even Jax. If you buy Jax with your app and drive through and get it, the school system's getting 0 of that sales tax, none of it. And so the SSUT is a big deal statewide, and the legislators realize it's a big deal, and there's been lots of conversations about it. But that is really, in my opinion, that has hurt the revenue coming into school systems from a sales tax standpoint, because it's going to be less and less because of that.
I have no idea.
I didn't either.
Does all that make halfway sense? Y'all
Yes.
got any other
Yeah.
questions?
Well, I've always wondered about how because they've always been a bid big on Wadley, stay in Wadley, and Woodland, stay in Woodland, and so on. And, you know, we've always talked about consolidation going back when I was a kid and Jimmy Holmes was superintendent. You know, they was a push for that, you know, back then, or they made it, talked about it or something. And, you know, I've always thought if we could educate the public enough and put the millage on it to go to education, you know, so we could hire extra teachers, what we need for the kids, and keep up our buildings. But you gotta educate, because when people hear tax, they just turn away. But, you know, if you talk to the people, it's gonna keep Wadley as Wadley, it helps Woodland and Wedowee, it's gonna help your kids get, you know, an extra coach, you get extra teacher, extra whatever. You know, people will vote for that. But if you go at it and just put it out there, and you don't educate them, it's dead in the water. You know, it's just not gonna, people don't like taxes, you know.
I think that's one thing you had said, that if you try to work on these first banks of project at around 8+, and you could add another 2 and try to go for 10 mills, I mean, that extra millage is what, that's gonna be 6 or 7 more teacher units.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's about what
That's a big deal.
It's a huge deal, because that's the most problems we have at Wadley. Wadley's small, and Wadley's liable to have 14 students in a class. Well, then this one over here has 32. This one in 14, I get no complaints. This one's got 32 kids in her kindergarten class. My manager was wearing me out. But I said, that's because we're Wadley. We ain't got enough for 2 teachers, but we got more enough on some grade levels, and it's all, and Wadley's a whole, Wadley needs about 100 more students.
because it's
It'd
hard.
lay right there at Woodland, and every class could have about 2. Anyway.
Because it's hard for the public to understand how we're funded. You know, we're not funded a whole teacher. Like if you, elementaries are funded on 18 kids per class. So if you've got 18, the state will pay you for that full teacher. But if you've got 24, they'll pay you more than what one teacher costs, but not enough to pay for 2. So if you earn a teacher and a half, and you have to furnish that other half of your own, by the time you pay for a teacher and benefits, that's about $45,000 that the system has to come out of the general fund, you know, to do that. And I think, you know, as a whole, we have not done a very good job of explaining things like that to the public, of how we get teacher units, because it can be confusing. And then with special ed students, we have a high level of number of percentage of students that we, you know, offer services to. And that's based on a formula from way back yonder on about 6%. And we've got more of that population. So everything that ties into it costs us money out of the general fund. As bad as Ms. Waters has said no to us all the time, and it has gotten us to a good place. And COVID has helped us to build up some reserves, but our reserves will only dwindle if we go forward with what we've got there. It's hard to keep our nose above water right now. So please, if y'all got questions, please, you know, ask them now. If you get questions later on, if you'll, you know, email me at school or call, if I don't know the answer, I'll contact Jay and them to get us some stuff going forward. And what I would like to do, you know, I think Ms. Ogilvy sent something out to y'all about changing next week's meeting to another week, because Harry's got I need to go to the hospital with our doctor that day with her. That would give time to be thinking about which way we would like to go. And at that point, then we could, you know, engage Scout or engage our architects to come around and just look at our facilities and see where we want to go and where we would need to go with a millage increase. I have talked to Roanoke City Superintendent, because this is something that would be voted on countywide about their needs. I know Roanoke City has needs just like we do. and it could be very beneficial to Roanoke City also. Clear as mud for everybody, as Jay said.
Any additional questions, thoughts? It's a lot to ponder on.
No, it's very educational.
Yes,
It's good,
absolutely.
very-
Well, I knew I couldn't do it, that's when I called J&M. I've known Jay, I've known his daddy forever, I've known his family, and I know that he does a fantastic job of what he does. He's helped us a little bit on some projects over the past few years, and I just appreciate them looking into this and being able to explain it better than I can. I like to have people explain things that's a lot smarter than I am. So,
I don't know that.
anything else?
And one other thing I was gonna give everybody an update on is, I'll kinda change that. We're gonna start clearing for the baseball field in Wadley, probably in about 4 to 5 weeks. We're gonna get in there, we're gonna jump on that, and, hopefully we will get that, timber cut and graded off by maybe midsummer, and then we can, once we get to that point, we can start looking at, some designs or whatever, what we wanna do, and we might have to hire, somebody to design it, whatever we need to do.
Okay.
Just some ideas maybe, so we'll just look at that as it comes
So
about.
just let me know.
But I know I mentioned that, and it's got kinda quiet, but anyway. It's finna dry out and get warm, so we can start moving dirt.
Well, that was one question that I saw thrown out there while we talking about consolidation, and if we're gonna build a baseball field, but, it's like John said, this has been talked about for years and years and years, and nobody wanted to bring it up, but to me, this was the perfect time to have that report there on everything we need to do, and not have to, I don't know what that report would have cost if we had to pay for it. I know the state got several $1 million from the federal government to do about 20, 25, 27 counties, so, we were beneficial, for getting that from that infrastructure, but I did send a letter and said, I knew I had old buildings. You're gonna give me a report that says you got old buildings, but they didn't provide any money to go along with it. So they spent this money to tell me what I already knew. I ain't got a reply yet either. But, adjourn it.
All right. If that is all, then, I guess we're adjourned from this work session, and we will see everybody on the 27th.
I appreciate y'all all coming today.
All right.